Hi everyone, it's Jessica Donegan and welcome back to another episode of Workshopped It. This is a series where we usually take an already published book and talk about what I liked and what I thought we could really change just a little bit to bring it to the next level. This episode though is actually going to be a little something special. Instead of talking about a book, we're going to talk about a movie. In this case, it's going to be Wonder Woman 1984. So I think a lot of us were really excited for Wonder Woman 1984 to come out. It has these beautiful, bright colors. It has a little bit of that flashing fun in the 80s. And even though I think the shine of an 80s setting is starting to wane a little bit, it's still incredibly popular to see that traditional setting. It has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people. So we were really looking forward to that. Also, I think the bright colors pair very well with a superhero story. And I think Wonder Woman in specific, where she had such a hopeful first story and could continue to be like a bright light, hopeful kind of character, those colors and the setting in the 80s made sense. Also, something I want to mention is that I did not see a lot of spoilers for Wonder Woman 1984. I was lucky enough to see it on Christmas Day. And I only saw 1 or 2 trailers for it before I saw it. And those trailers were very minimal. Really all I got from them was that we were going to be in the 80s and that Wonder Woman's costume was really bright. And that just made me happy. The other thing I'll say before we get into it is that I don't really follow comic books. I'm not familiar with a lot of comic book lore. This workshop is not going to bring things closer in line with comics probably, and if they do, it'll be completely unintentionally because I don't know what the source material is and I didn't go look it up. I'm not interested in it being accurate. I'm just interested in it being a better story than it is right now. So Wonder Woman 1984 starts us off with a flashback where we're back on Themyscira with Diana / Wonder Woman being a child. And I don't think the scene works the way it was intended to work. It shows us a race that's happening and Diana is competing as a child against other adult competitors. And in it, she ends up falling off her horse, and to try and catch up to everyone else, she takes a shortcut. And when she comes through to be triumphant at the end of the race, her mentor stops her from finishing because she cheated. Except that doesn't work at all for me because she cheated in the same way that almost every 90s main story hero has cheated in a kid's race story before. Instead of following the main path, they take a back way and it leads them out in front of the pack and they win. I understand where they're coming from with the cheating, but it doesn't pair well with every story trope that we've ever seen before. And the other thing about it is it's not like Diana was out there being nefarious, like, I can't win on my own skills, so I'm going to hop a couple fences and get there first. No, she was leading by a lot. And then she got knocked down by a tree branch. And instead of giving up and just sitting there, she found a way to take a shortcut to catch up with her horse that had continued to run the race. And then she was able to still finish. And she was finishing first, but not with anywhere near the lead she had originally. So there's just a lot of elements that don't work. First of all, she literally follows every 90 race story I've ever seen's plot points beat for beat. They're an underdog. In this case, Diana's an underdog because she's younger. Something happens that sabotages their run even though they were winning. In this case, Diana falls off her horse. And then instead of giving up, they show resilience by finding an inventive way to get around it and coming in first regardless. The only difference is that Diana's fellow Amazons aren't the ones who sabotaged her. And somehow I'm supposed to take that beat that's always been a hero triumph story and turn it around to be a cheater story and show a crack in Diana's moral character that we're led to believe will come back to us. I understand they wanted to show Themyscira again because it's beautiful. And I understand they wanted to show us all the Amazon women because like the armor and all of the warrior pride and stuff is all really cool. But it didn't go thematically with the story. First of all, I don't think it really showed cheating to its fullest. And I don't think the no shortcuts really applies thematically to what happens in the rest of the story. So instead of this Themyscira flashback, I'd still start on a flashback with the Amazons, but it would be them fleeing our world to go to Themyscira. And I'd focus in on the one Amazon they left behind with all the armor and her fighting while they escape. So that would be really cool because it would introduce us to the armor that we're going to see later. And it would give us a flashback. We could have the other Amazonian women like giving her a pat on the back and maybe like cheering from the boats. And it would also give us some time to develop her, to really understand her sacrifice, to understand that Diana is not the first Amazonian to make some kind of sacrifice like this. Because I think the theme of this is sacrifice. And I also think the theme of this is putting your own personal needs aside to handle others. So thematically this flashback works better. And also it gives us a little bit more interest about the Amazons as a whole, like why they were fleeing and just what their culture is like, where one person can volunteer and they'll surrender all their armor to help her hold off the hordes while everyone else flees to safety. And we can even cut from this one Amazon fighting in the armor and saving all of her people and their victorious cheers from the boat. We can flash to midway where Diana is looking for the armor and she finds it and she can whisper something like, she can whisper something about it that explains that materials stay on even though people fall. Or like your sacrifice wasn't in vain or something to that extent. Something like thank you and I'll protect this armor for you from here on out. That way this little teaser before the intro of the movie will show us about the woman who stayed behind. It'll give us the story of the armor and it will establish that Diana found it and that it means a lot to her. And two, depending on Diana's state of mind, on her acting, we could understand that Diana is in mourning, that she's lonely, that she's desperately looking to reconnect. She's still not handling the loss of Steve well, and she's alone, and she was hoping to find kinship here, and instead she just found this armor. And it's sort of like this dark, gloomy impression of what's going to happen to her later. Because Diana also sacrificed herself. In this case, she left the island. But whether you stay behind and never go to the island or you leave the island, you're still stranded without your fellows. You don't ever expect to see them again, and you don't ever expect to be understood in this world. And the person that Diana left with is gone. So all of that could be a really tight, emotional moment. It could tell us all about this armor that's going to play in later. And it sets us up with the theme of sacrifice. So after that flashback, we're going to transition to the title screen. It'll be Wonder Woman 1984, whatever font you want, however you want that to look, great. I trust other people to make that look good. Then we're going to do the same 80s montage that was originally in the film. I like the bright colors, I like the fun moments that we get with Diana, I love the back and forth between her, saving the kids and all that, and I like the bank robbery. I think it sets us up well. All of that to me worked really well, I wouldn't change any of that. Alright, so now we're going to cut to the Smithsonian and Kristen Wiig's character. I think Kristen Wiig's character is one of the greatest failings of the movie, and it falls flat in so many areas. The first thing I'm going to do to fix this is I'm going to have Kristen Wiig be an established character in the Smithsonian. She's not a new employee, no one notices or whatever. She has been in the Smithsonian, she's been working there, and Diana knows her. In fact, instead of like that whole I can't handle my heels thing and I'm really awkward, we're going to have her walk in with all of her stuff. She can still get knocked down, right? And all her papers can fall out. And Diana can come to help her pick those papers up. And instead of it being a meeting moment, Kristen Wiig can go, oh, Diana, thank you. And that can establish that they've known each other, that they're kind of friendly colleagues. And Diana can say something like, oh, you know, it's nothing, and people need to look at where they're going, you know, that kind of banter. And Kristen Wiig could be like, yeah, you know, like, how are things with you? She can be giving that small talk. And Diana can say something non-committal, but we're going to establish that they're friends. And instead of this being like a hard ask to get them to go out for dinner together, it's going to be a already predetermined thing. Like, we're still on for tonight for dinner after work, and Diana will say something like, yeah, sure. Or something more like, of course. And then the two of them can still have that fun dialogue. They can still talk and have that girl time. But I want them to be friends. I want them to have been friends before the movie started, And I want them, I don't know, to talk about work. She can still talk about how the FBI is, maybe at dinner is when we find out that the FBI is bringing her some stolen gems. And Diana can be interested in that because she knows those gems are from the heist that she just foiled in the last scene. And she can be wondering, like, what those criminals wanted. Was this more than a standard heist? Maybe she has a feeling about it, and that's part of what's driving her interest in this. Or she can just be interested like a friend would be. And at the same time, we can see that Kristen Wiig is just generally quiet and timid. You know, she can say how much she admires Diana's confidence in the room and her grace, and Diana can talk about how she admires her kind heart. I see Kristen Wiig's character as being good at her job, being a little offbeat and quirky, and being timid. And her wishing that she could reach out more to people and just not seeing the right way to do it. So then we can go back to the wishing rock. We can have the same moment where the one guy wishes for coffee and gets it. And we can have Diana wish for Steve back. I'm on board with the Steve coming back thing. And later, Kristen Wiig can still wish to be like Diana. I think just establishing that the Kristen Wiig character and the Diana character have known each other and are friends and do things together changes so much in the story. Because for starters, it gives us a girl duo in a superhero story, which we haven't had yet. And if there's one thing, it's that there's not much female representation in superhero stories, and having one is always like enough or grudgingly enough. And I think that it would be more meaningful in the end when Kristen Wiig and Diana have to face off if they really establish a strong bond. So if we saw like some tenderness there, and we saw mutual admiration, respect, we saw they were both good at their jobs, they had things they did together outside of work, it would help sell later the power struggle the two end up in. Where Kristen Wiig's character is attacked after giving the meal to the one homeless man, and Diana steps in to save her, she should say something like, you know, I've been working on my self-defense and I still can't get the movement down just right. You know, show that the two of them already are working on that. Kristen Wiig's already trying to move towards that more smooth, suave version of herself on her own without the power of the stone. And then she can get there, wish to be more like Diana, and especially now that she was almost made helpless like that. And in fact, she can focus not so much on like the poise, but Diana's in personal strength and the way that she can command a room. I'd leave the whole Maxwell Lord situation untouched. I don't love every moment of acting that's going on there. I think that Kristen Wiig's like awkward, weird character comes out a little bit more than maybe would be good for this movie. But at the same time, I can see how it came about. Because she's not used to a lot of attention, and she sort of would like that kind of romance. And she is really good at her job in my version. So, you know, Maxwell Lord's attention flatters her and makes her a little nervous because she's not used to it. So I'm going to give that interaction a pass, and I'm going to get us to the ball in the same way. When we're at the party and Diana meets Steve again, I'm going to get rid of the weird, it's another dude element. I have to say, when I first saw it, it was really confusing, and my husband and I actually argued about what we were seeing. I was like, so did Steve just take over another guy's body? And he turned to me and he said, no, I think this guy died, and that left space for Steve's soul to come in and take over his body. Which made more sense than Steve just taking over a random person's life out of nowhere. So I decided that's what had happened, even though the movie didn't give us any of that information. So it was really jarring to see that guy at the end of the movie alive and well. And also it's creepy that Diana might have some kind of relationship with him after Steve isn't there anymore. All of that doesn't work for me. So we're just going to get rid of that part of the movie. Steve's just going to fully come back. Diana will recognize him right away. She'll recognize the voice. She'll turn around, she won't believe it, she'll think like she's imagining it. Maybe that's why she ignores him at first. And then when she sees him and they have that iconic moment that was in the trailers, you know, fireworks go off in the background and the two of them do their little hookup or whatever. And they can just do that at Diana's place. We don't need a new destination. And they can just be so happy to be with each other again, and Steve cannot understand why, and neither can Diana. I mean, now she knows something weird is happening, but she doesn't know exactly why. So that's cool. And meanwhile, the story between Maxwell Lord and Kristen Wiig happens exactly the same way, and the guy gets his hand on the wishing stone. And he's going to go back to his office, and he is going to wish to become the wishing stone. I do think that we're going to need some more interaction between Maxwell Lord and his kid. I just didn't entirely buy their relationship and his willingness to do anything for him, or the length that he's doing this specifically for his kid. I mean, it seems to me that he's doing this to stay out of jail and to pay off all these debts he has, not just to create a legacy for his child. So I wish that we had more about that. Like maybe, yeah, we could see his kid in some ratty outfits, and maybe his kid is a little bit sick and he needs an expensive medication, or maybe his child is getting nicer things from his mom and his mom's new boyfriend, and Maxwell Lord's character is competing a little bit for affection and for the child's overall well-being. He wants to provide as much as mom and the boyfriend is. Just like that little extra that would oomph that part of the story up. Because I think the Maxwell Lord and his kid part of the story work. They just don't work as well as they could. And if we just add that little bit, that would really kick it up. So it's the next day, and Diana's gotten over the wonder she had of Steve being alive, and is now more worried about the how and the why of that. And she connects the stone and her wish to the fact that Steve is now here. Like, that's just a little too good to be true. And she takes Steve to the Smithsonian. They can still do their montage of amazement or whatever on the way there. And she finds Kristen, and she says, hey, that stone, did you find anything new about it? And Kristen be like, oh, no, not really, it's a hunk of junk. And Diana's like, well, can I see it? Like, I want to look at it a little bit more. I feel like there's something we're missing. And Kristen can be like, this is really awkward, but I actually gave the stone away to Maxwell Lord. And Diana will be all, what? And she'll be scolding Kristen, and because they have a relationship now, Kristen will be like, I know, you're right, instead of being defensive. She'll agree, she'll be like, I feel really bad about it, I didn't feel good about it when it happened, but I thought me and Maxwell had a connection, and I was caught up in the moment, and I did something I shouldn't have, and I'm really sorry. And Diana will be like, alright, well, we gotta get this stone back. And then Kristen Wiig can say something like, and I'm gonna help you. Because we need to wrap her into this story. She is too far away from the rest of the story. The way we're gonna fix this is she's gonna say, and I'm gonna help you. And Diana's gonna be like, oh no, that's okay. Me and Steve are gonna work this out. And Kristen Wiig can be like, no, I feel so terrible about what happened. I have to help you get it back. And she goes, in fact, I think I can walk in there and talk to Maxwell. And while I'm in there distracting him, I can walk in and I can talk to Maxwell. Maybe he'll give me the stone back. Maybe he won't. You guys can sneak around. And Diana can go, yes, that's perfect. You can ask him. And while you're taking the front approach, Steve and I will sneak in. And if he will give you the stone back, then great. And if he won't give you the stone back, then we'll be able to take it while you distract him. Kristen goes, oh, that makes sense. That sounds good. That way, if he did have good intentions, we'll know. And if he didn't, we'll still be able to get the stone back. And I think this would be really powerful because it would start to show that Kristen Wiig and Diana have a relationship and have a dynamic going on. And that way, when Kristen Wiig starts developing some powers, Diana can notice it. And the two of them can do a little team-up, tag-team situation. They can do some training, they can do some bank robberies together, the whole 9 yards. So when Kristen Wiig is confronting Maxwell Lord, the office is really crowded, and she's like pushing some people out of the way, and her strength is a little bit more than she expected. And she's surprised, but she's in the moment and she's focused. So we can get still some of those fun unexpected reveals where she pushes people out of the way, and maybe Maxwell Lord's not even giving her the time of day. Like, he's even pretending he doesn't know her, because he's so caught up in his own plans and what he has going on. He just doesn't care about her anymore at all. And she can hit her hand hard on the desk, and it can crack the wood because of how hard she slammed her hand down. Maybe even break the desk, depending on how far we want to go with that. And that gets his attention. He turns to deal with her. And she's flustered, she's flummoxed, she doesn't know why that worked like that, because she still doesn't understand about her own wish and that situation. And Maxwell can recognize that something strange is going on, and that she was in contact with the wishing stone, and he can see that he needs to know more before he proceeds. And meanwhile, we have Diana sneaking in with Steve, and they're in the office at this point in time. They're discovering the stone is dust, and they're going to take the little ring that was left over. The ring, we're going to find out, was some kind of container. It wasn't just an announcement of what the stone was, it was also a way to control the power. And that's why it didn't dissolve when the stone dissolved. Because to me that was very confusing. Either everything should have gone away, or what was left could have been a part that was helping to rein in the stone's power. So this ring is going to come back for us. We're going to use it later to help get Maxwell Lord back under control. Once everyone is at the Smithsonian, Kristen's going to confess to Diana about her newfound strength and how it displayed in Maxwell Lord's office. And meanwhile, Diana is going to be thinking about how it was strange that she had trouble breaking the lock to break into Maxwell Lord's house. And while Diana's in thought, and after Kristen Wiig is done thinking, she's going to realize that Steve is actually a lot like that guy that Diana said that she had fallen in love with and lost. So they're all going to come together and understand that what they wished for most on the stone came into being. And that's when Diana's going to bring out the little ring thing that she took back and be like, this is all that was left of the stone. I don't really know what happened to it, but we have to figure out where it is, and we have to put this back on it. Its power is so great and potentially destructive that without this ring, the consequences are way too dire. We can't even risk it. And she's still contemplating the idea that she got Steve from this stone, and that she might be losing her powers. And she doesn't even want to address that part with Kristen yet, because she's not 100% sure of her conclusions. She thinks like maybe it was just a really strong lock, and she doesn't even know what Kristen would have to lose, and she doesn't want to worry her friend for no reason. So from there, they decide that they have to follow Maxwell Lord around, and that's when they find out that he is going overseas to talk to the oil baron. And the airplane scene I would have play out mostly the same, except Kristen Wiig's going to be there too. She's going to argue that maybe popping up unexpectedly could distract Maxwell and give them a chance to find answers. And if she doesn't distract Maxwell Lord, or they don't use her that way, she can be researching the ring while they're traveling, and they can still have the ring on hand ready to use when they find the stone. They haven't given up yet on the idea that Maxwell's got the stone on him somewhere. They just don't know how, and they don't understand yet about the dust and the ring coming off yet. So the whole overseas thing is going to play out pretty much the same, except that Kristen Wiig is going to tag along too, and she is going to show, while Diana is losing her strength exactly in the same way, we're going to have some scenes where Kristen helps Steve out, and we're going to see how she's getting stronger. She doesn't know what to do with that strength yet, but she's able to really push some guys way out there. When Steve's having trouble pulling the tank top off, Kristen gives it a huge yank, and the thing just comes off the hinges and it's gone. There's no more opening on the tank anymore. Some elements like that. That's going to help them come to a couple conclusions. They're still going to find out about the stone the same way, and they're going to understand that Diana is losing her strength as punishment or as payment for Steve being back. And they're going to turn to Kristen and understand that she's losing something too. And instead of Kristen being horrified, like Diana expects, or worried, or even concerned for or even concerned for her friend. Like maybe she's like, oh, Diana, what are you gonna do? Or like, oh no, that's awful, Diana. You know, you shouldn't have to choose between love and your strength. Kristen Wiig's gonna sort of shrug and be like, so what? You know, it's not a big deal. Whatever they took was worth what I gained. She's gonna say something like that, and then she's gonna turn to Diana and be like, don't you agree? Isn't the love of your life more important than any physical capability you had? And she's gonna be aggressive like that. And that's how we're gonna start to see that the stone is trading her kindness for power. And we're gonna see how that starts to play negatively against the two's relationship. Even after she's sharp, she's gonna see that Diana's face has like sort of taken it back, and sort of like she's gonna realize she overstepped, and she's going to apologize. And she's like, you know, I don't know what they're taking from me. I can't imagine what would be worth what I've gained. But I can see that this is tearing you apart, and I'm sorry. And we will keep working together, and we'll figure something out. And Diana kind of shakily nods because she's also not ready to give up Steve yet. So we can still have the same escalating scenes from Maxwell Lord as he causes mayhem and panic with everyone else's wishes, and how he is eventually going to the president to really up his ante and to avoid consequences for all the wishes he's made so far. And while that's happening, instead of whatever was going on with Wonder Woman and Kristen Wiig before, which was so flat I don't even remember, I'm going to have the two of them on the street fighting crime together. So we're going to do a whole fun montage scene, breaking into the White House and getting the Maxwell Lord. And we're going to have Kristen Wiig's character holding Maxwell Lord down at this point in time, like hands behind his back, holding him in place while Diana approaches him. She's a lot weaker at this point in the story than she was previously. She's got basically human strength. And while she's still skilled at fighting, she is not adjusted to the lack of strength yet. So Kristen is helping her by holding on to Maxwell Lord, and Diana is approaching with words. She's just saying, renounce your wish, return the wishing stone back to this container. That way we can keep the power contained. And, you know, the stone is killing you. Your health is not so good. You can't keep going like this. Just renounce your wish. All the other wishes that people made on you will go back to normal, and the world can be saved. You know, because she's still in denial about what she has to do. She's still not ready to renounce her wish. And of course, Kristen isn't ready to renounce her wish either. So Maxwell Lord, he is going to laugh in her face and be like, why would I ever give up this power? Who cares if it's killing me? I can control the wishes. I can get my health back. I can have anything I want by being the wishing stone. And with my power unleashed, without that trinket holding me back, I can do whatever I want. And Diana's going to be like, you can do whatever you want except escape me right now. And the two of them are going to have like a hard stare standoff. And Maxwell is going to turn to Kristen and say, what about you? Are you going to renounce your wish? And Kristen's going to sneer and be like, no, I'm never going back to that pathetic person again. And that's when we're going to see the hard cruelty tip. And Maxwell's going to be like, what makes you think that she is going to give you a choice? And Kristen's going to be like, no one can ever hold me down no one's going to be able to hold me down or force my hand ever again. That's what my wish was about. I'm strong now. You know, I'm the one in power. And Maxwell is going to be like, but she's always going to be looking down on you. She's always going to be pressing you. It's never going to be enough. No one is going to be able to keep their wishes. That's not what she wants. Do you want her to take your wish away the way she's trying to take my wish away? Don't you think we should all have our own ability to choose? And she doesn't really even understand where we're coming from. She has everything. She's always had everything. It's easy for her to tell us to be happy with what we have. Look at her and look at us. And it's always going to be people like her against people like us. Me as the wishing stone, I've just been evening the playing field. I've just been giving other people the chance to be like her. And is it any surprise that we won't give it up the same way that she won't give it up? And that's going to get Kristen Wiig's mind thinking. That's going to be a turning point for her. And she's gonna look at Diana, and Diana's gonna shake her head, like with that helpless emotion, like, no, don't fall for this. And then she's gonna sneer and be like, it's true, Diana, you have always had everything, and you've never appreciated it. And you are always telling other people to be happy with what they have, instead of understanding why they might want or need more. And she's gonna be like, and you're right, I don't see why wishing for things is bad. I don't see why getting what you wish for is bad. And I think it's okay that people pay a price for it. I don't miss what I gave up for my power, and I'm sure other people feel the same way about their wishes. I'm sure they're happy with them. And that's when she's going to release Maxwell and tell him to go to the chopper that he was headed for. And Diana's going to face her and be like, Kristen, don't do this. We're friends. We've been working together. You've seen all the chaos that this has caused. Why are you doing this? And she's going to be like, who am I to say that everyone isn't better off with what they wished for? I'm better off with what I wish for. And everything that's happening around us, it doesn't affect me. I'm just fine. In fact, I'm better than I've ever been. This is going to be the break between the two of them. And they're going to have a fight scene. And Steve is going to come in and sort of stand between Kristen and Diana right before like a killing blow would have happened. And he's going to be like, why are you being like this? We're all on the same side. We're friends. Can't you see you'll kill her? Kristen's going to have a moment of clarity and she's going to run. But where she's going to run to is to the chopper to be with Maxwell Lord. She's chosen her side, and unfortunately it's not with Diana. And at this point in time, we're still going to see the world crumbling around us. We're still going to get the same soppy speech from Steve. And we're going to get the understanding that once Maxwell revokes his wish, all the other wishes that were made on him are going to go away. I'm going to skip the whole flying thing. It really didn't feel earned. Even though I've built more emotion and more portrayal here, I still don't think the flying thing is earned. I like the invisible plane and I like the fireworks scene because visually it's stunning and it's like going on a fun adventure and they don't know yet how intense the adventure is going to be. But I'm not getting the same power here with this flying scene. Instead of the flying scene, we're going to have Diana stumble back into her apartment and pull off the tarp to reveal the armor that we saw her collect. And we're going to have that callback moment where just as that warrior had sacrificed her life to save everyone else, and Diana has sacrificed her love to save everyone else, she's also going to don this armor and complete the task. And we're going to get like a stony-faced resolve and a transition to that triumphant golden armor. She is going to get to this island area using the invisible plane. I don't want to explain how she learned to fly. That's going to be a plot hole that just exists in my story. We'll just assume Diana learned somewhere how to fly. And she is going to be met with Kristen Wiig again. And she's going to try one more time to get Kristen to renounce her wish. She hasn't given up on that friendship. She's going to be like, look at yourself. You can't even recognize who you are anymore. This wish has changed you. You are not the same person anymore. How can anything be worth the loss of you? And Kristen's going to kind of sneer and be like, just because you gave up on the one thing you wanted most doesn't mean that I'll do the same. And you don't have the right to make anyone else give up. You shouldn't have the power to take away other people's choices. And they're going to fight. And in this context, this also makes Kristen's character intentionally sympathetic because she is espousing a belief that many people would agree with. We can see that the ends for Kristen Wiig were not good, but we can also understand where she's coming from because who's to say what a thing is worth and whether or not you're willing to give something up to have something else. In this case, didn't work out well for Kristen, but there's no saying about other people. So someone is going to have to come in and clean up that CGI fight because it was an ugly mess, and eventually Kristen's going to lose and Wonder Woman is going to move on to going inside, and we're going to have some kind of similar montage scene about the wishing and this guy's health improving and her getting rid of the camera and the particles and, you know, some of the crazy speech going on. And we're also going to come to understand that the ring that we've been hoping is going to encase this power is actually not going to do anything. All this time they've spent like studying it and holding on to it, Maxwell Lord is going to reveal the ring itself. The only thing it does is force the wishing stone's power to stay in this realm. That the deity that created it, it was a power that was meant for another realm, and the only way to keep it here to cause mischief and trouble was to encapsulate it in a ring. And the way Maxwell Lord's gotten around this is through a series of wishing. That's part of what he took in return, was the power to contain the wishing stone of his own desire. And we can still get the son being in trouble, and because of that Maxwell Lord renounces his wish, and instead of seeing everyone across the world renounce their wish, they can all just go away. All that stuff can just stop as soon as he's not the wishing stone anymore, because it means technically no one ever made those wishes, since Maxwell Lord didn't have the power to grant them. So the only person in the whole world who has a wish still is Kristen Wiig. She still is holding on to her wish. Everyone else's wish is gone. We can have the same emotional beat where Maxwell Lord finds his son miraculously where he needs to be to have that emotional beat. The logic is a little wishy-washy, but we're in a superhero movie and we're here for the journey, so I'm going to let those things stand the same. And Wonder Woman is still going to be sad. You know, she's still going to have that reminiscing about her time with Steve, and on top of that, she's going to go into the Smithsonian and see that empty chair where Kristen Wiig used to sit and realize that she has lost a friend as well. And she's going to, you know, sort of stare forlornly at the empty chair and wonder if it's part of her fate in this world to always be sacrificing for the greater good. And that's how I'm going to close out my Wonder Woman 2. It's sad, it's probably sadder than that movie ending, but I feel like it is a stronger movie. We make better use of the cheetah, and we set her up for her own movie later. Like now, the cheetah, which is Kristen Wiig's character, can still be out there with her power, and her goal can still be to give people choices and for her to be the strongest and not let other people control her. And those motivations can drive her to do other nefarious things that Diana will have to confront maybe in the third movie. And it also will continue to create an emotional tension between those two characters every time they're confronting each other. So I think all of that is stronger and helps. So my final pitch here is mostly to make Kristen Wiig's character more involved in the story and for us to better see her journey and for that journey to have meaning and potentially future setup. And also to take away some of the moments that were unearned in the Wonder Woman story. There's a lot of these impressive beats that happen, and we as the audience don't feel like we saw how Wonder Woman got there. We're just like, oh, that's great. Good things just happen to Wonder Woman all the time. And she just has to do so little to make things work out for her. And two, it will help us feel a stronger loss for Steve. At the end, he didn't just sacrifice his life for the world again, but when that fight between Kristen and Wonder Woman was happening at the President's, he stepped in and protected her specifically with his life. And that's all going to give more power to the scenes around it. So I would just build more emotion and a little bit more cohesion, and some of that would be creating more female friend moments before their eventual breaking. I hope you guys like this, and if you did like this episode of Workshopped It, please leave a like, give me a comment with whether or not you enjoyed Wonder Woman or if you too were disappointed. And if you want more content like this, I actually have a playlist that has all my Workshopped It's together. I've got 2 others that are worth looking at. And I have another video out too called Fanfic Maybe, where I explore a book that I found that's a lot like 2016's Lucifer. So if you like that kind of media comparison, that might be fun for you to look at as well. Other than that, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for sticking with me, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye!